Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Welcome to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage. Today's show is a combination of clips from our first and second interviews we did with James Pankow almost 2 years ago, plus some new footage we didn't have in the original interviews. James talks about how the band, and that's where we start, is how Chicago, how the members met and got together and formed a pact to do this band and see it through. A lot of people, you see Chicago after they've become who they are, you don't realize what all they had to go through to get to where they are, and the passion that was involved in creating the music that we're all the lucky ones to be able to enjoy. Hope you enjoy it. If you do, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Once again, James Pankow, The Story of Chicago.
Okay, I'm back at DePaul, and I'm practicing in the practice room at DePaul. I'm a new student, a transfer student, and I keep seeing the practice rooms were these soundproof little cubicles, and they had a door with a little window in the door, and they were soundproofed, and I'd go in there after classes, and I'd shed on the trombone, I'd practice, and I kept seeing this face in the window of the door. I mean, a lot of people would kind of peek in and see who was in there. But there was one face in particular that kept coming by and looking at me. And he wasn't just seeing who was in it, he was looking at me like, I'm onto you, man, I'm onto you. And I kept seeing his face, And finally, he knocked on the door. And I opened the door and he said, dude, you're probably wondering who the heck I am because you keep seeing my face in the window, but I just had to tell you, I really like your playing. And I'm Walt Perizzator, and I have an idea that I'd like to run by you. And he talked to me about forming a rock and roll band with an indigenous horn section. Not just frosting on the cake, doing riffs, but a horn section that was one of the main characters in the music. He wasn't quite sure how that might play out, or maybe he wasn't quite sure of musically what he was trying to explain, but the idea was to have a rock and roll band with a lead horn section, just like another vocal. And the concept was fascinating because that hadn't been done. And I went, yeah, man, I want to talk some more about this. I'm in, yeah.
What year was this?
This was 1967. And he introduced me to another student by the name of Lee Lockney, trumpet player. And he had talked to Lee about the idea. And Lee said, so Jimmy, what do you think? I went, I think it's amazing. I think it's worth pursuing. But what are we going to do about a rhythm section? I mean, okay, we got our horn section here. We got a saxophone, trumpet, and trombone. What about a rhythm section? And Walt said, well, the missing links are on the way out. And the missing links were a local club act that Walt and Danny Serafin and Terry Kath had been members of. And they were going away. The leader of the band had very little or no talent, and his father booked the band. So all that was to them was income, but it was not fun. Mm-hmm. So Terry and Danny and Walt decided to break off and proposed this idea to some worthwhile horn players. Fortunately, I had transferred to DePaul, and I came into Walt's radar, and he invited me to be the trombone player.
I can't imagine there ever being anybody else, though. Can you?
Well, who knows? Who knows? Of course, you could.
I don't think so.
I just happened to be. I was blessed enough to be at the right place at the right time, and I didn't know where I was going to go with this at that time. The concept sounded really fascinating because, to my knowledge, nothing like that had ever been done before. We needed a bass player and a keyboard player, perhaps. And who was going to sing vocals? Well, Terry sang, but none of the three of us horn players are really lead vocalists, per se. We had good pitch, we were capable of singing backgrounds, but we needed another strong vocalist, bass player, keyboards for him. Danny Seraphin and Walt heard about this guy that was in a club on the South Side. His name was Bobby Charles, and his band was the Wanderers, and they were playing this dive on the South Side. And they went to check him out because they had heard a buzz about it. They went down to catch him, and he was doing some amazing songs, all of which he wrote, as they found out after they spoke with him on a break. He wrote all his own material. He played the crap out of it, and he sang amazingly well. And they asked him if he, if he could play B3, because it had bass pedals. And that way we could have a keyboard and a bass and not have to pay another guy to play bass, because he sang too. And he was playing a Wurlitzer, some electric piano at that club, and he said, yeah, sure, I can play B3, I can play Hammond, which was total BS. He had never played a Hammond, but he loved this idea they proposed so much that he was willing to stick his neck out and go buy a used organ and shed on it until we all convened for the first time.
And they're not cheap.
No.
Not even then.
No, he probably mortgaged most of his life to get that. It was an M3, a cut-down version of a B3 with the bass pedals. And we met at Walt's parents' house, and for the first time, I had just recently met Terry, Kath, and Danny Seraphin, and before we met at Walt's parents' house, all of us, Walt arranged to have all of us meet at his apartment on the north side of Chicago. He had a bottle of whiskey on the table. We each poured a shot, and we took a shot and shook hands and agreed and promised to commit all of our time and energy into making this idea happen. So it was a gentleman's handshake, and next thing you know, we were at in Walt's parents' basement, and holy crap. Terry just starts, I feel good. Da, 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 da. Terry loved James Brown. And we started jamming on James Brown. And Danny was like the funkiest soul drummer I had ever heard. And Robert was on the bass pedals on the Hammond. He had done some serious shredding because he was right on it. And Papa's got a brand new bag. Papa's got a brand new bag. And it was like, holy cow. It was like we had been playing together forever. It was just.
Well, I thought Terry started at bass.
So good.
Terry was playing bass guitar originally, wasn't he?
Oh, he was playing bass with the Missing Links.
But he switched over to guitar.
We hired him to be our guitar player.
Okay, all right.
He played both, but they needed in the Missing Links. The leader of the band, whose dad booked the band, was the guitar player, and he sucked. So, but Terry was relegated to play bass, and Terry was an amazing bass player. But in the context of Chicago, which wasn't really Chicago yet, it was just a bunch of guys, he was looked at by us as hopefully being our guitar player. And when he started playing guitar, we were going crazy. I mean, he was playing the funk. I mean, Prince would have kissed his feet. I mean, he was. I mean, I closed my eyes. It could have been Steve Cropper. It could have been, you know, as good as it gets. And so we all realized that we had something. You know, the horn section, we were just doing head licks. And it was fun, and it was smoking. It was smoking. But that wasn't the finality of this idea, this path that we chose. We had discussed an ensemble with a more important role for the horn section. You know, everybody could do that, all the licks.
Yeah.
How are we going to approach this horn section and make it unique and make it part of the overall personality of the band? So if you took the horns out, there's a blank space, right. Okay? It becomes a lead role. That fell in my lap because I had already begun arranging for my outfit, but not like this. And this gave me a whole palette to do anything I heard. For the time being, it wasn't a concern because we had to build a reputation and pay our rent. And to do that, we got an agent who booked all the nightclubs in the Midwest. And we were kind of a half-baked Vegas show band. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Club Gigi. We're going to warm you up with a little Tijuana brass. And then we're going to take a little break. We'll see you down. Remember, the more you drink, the better we sound. So anyway, we're working these clubs for about, a year or so. All of a sudden, you know, Robert, who had been writing songs all along, started bringing original music into the band. And we loved it. Before we started doing completely original music, however, we first experimented with doing Chicagoized. At that time, we weren't Chicago. We were the big thing. This mob boss, this mob agent in Chicago. You guys, I got a good name for you guys. The big thing. Because you guys sound like you could be the next big thing. You know what I mean? So let's make the name the big thing. Ting, T-I-N-G, the big thing. Joe D. As the big thing, we slowly evolved into doing customized arrangements of popular songs. But the club owners wanted to hear top 40. R&B was the top 40 at that time. Wilson Pickett, Sam and Dave, The Temptations, Four Tops, the Rascals came along. We did some of that. The Righteous Brothers, Aretha, James Brown. That was all the hit music of the day, which was great for us because it did have horns in it, although the horns played more of a secondary role. So we started taking a lot of these songs and customizing them, putting little instrumental stretch outs in them with horn ensembles, where there was nothing but the horns playing instrumental melody. And this started to become really inspiring. It started shaping a direction for me. The guys were digging it. The guys in the band were digging it. They go, man, this is awesome. How did you do that? Well, you know, I listened to the vocal and I just kind of sing a solo in my head around the vocal that complements it, and then I voice it where it works. It's just kind of I'm humming an alternate melody that complements the vocal melody that's already there. And it seems to work. But as soon as we started putting these original arrangements and music into our club sets, we got fired. We got fired from one place after another. Mm-hmm. And we were on stage at the Attic. The place was packed. And we showed up at the club. We had been slicking our hair back, right, with Vaseline, you know, because in those days, you know, the Beatles had come along, you know, and, you know, the Beatles, you know, the long hair, you know, and so the long hair was forbidden. Nobody wanted anything to do with, oh yeah, well, you're hippies, you know, you're against the war in Vietnam, you're demonstrating, you know, Abby Hoffman, all that shit. So if you had long hair, you were a communist, you know, a commie sicko, as they called us. So we used to grease our hair back, you know, or put it in a ponytail or whatever. This night, you know, before this show, we were just beginning the second week of a 2-week engagement, and we were at the motel, and we had all taken some, shall we say, mind enhancers. And Terry Kath went out and bought Sgt. Pepper, and we put that record on, and it changed everything. We were psychedelic, and we were listening to Sgt. Pepper, Lucy in the Sky with Diamond, Magical Mystery Tour. Hold up to the mystery tour. George Martin, man. Now that's horns. That's orchestral. That's melodic. And it's unique. And that's when we decided we're going to be us. Screw these clubs. We're going to be us. But that was a tough decision because we were looking a gift horse in the mouth, which was our bread and butter, which was our food on the table. Do we roll the dice and be us and continue to get fired looking for work? Or do we play the game and just do us on the side for our own amusement until the right people hear it? Because we'll never pay our rent. Well, let's start by doing it tonight. Okay. So we showed up at the Attic. We went on stage with our suits inside out and our hair was long. We let our hair down. And the club owner's at the bar with all his cronies getting his butt kissed. We launch into when I won your love, you were everything to me. How could I be such a fool by Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention? And we carved it. And as we're doing this and getting outside with it, the club owner turns and looks at us like he wanted to kill us. He gets up off his bar stool, walks over to the stage. Mind you, the club is packed. He walks right up to the front of the stage and grabs Walt's pants leg. And he's doing this. And what he was saying is, Walt, you're all a bunch of assholes. You're fired. Get the hell out of my club. And I'm going, Walt, what did he say? What did he say? Well, I think we're fired. Walt gets on the mic and goes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Everybody chill out, relax, have a drink. You know, the more you drink, the better we sound. As he's saying this, Robert Lamb dives off the stage and grabs the club owner by the throat. The club owner grabs him. They're like this, heading across the front of the stage toward the dressing room. The people in the club are looking at this going, what the hell is this? What's going on? Walt goes, we're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll be right back. Hey, everything's cool. We'll be right back. Have a good time. We'll see you in a minute. We get off stage and go in the dressing room, and they're on the floor, literally trying to kill each other. We had to pull them apart. We pulled them apart. I mean, Robert's a big dude.
I didn't know that Robert was that bad.
Robert's a big guy, and we're all Chicago guys. We know how to take care of ourselves. We grew up that way in the neighborhoods. But Robert's a big man. He's 6'2.5", and you know, he had the club owner on the floor. Well, the club owner was not, you know, the club owner was fighting for his life too. We separated him and wound up getting kicked out of the club. You'll never work, not only in this club again, but you'll never work anywhere again. Because Zoe was like, he was the guy. If Zoe liked you, every other club owner would book you. If Zoe gave you the thumbs down, nobody else would hire you. So he was Caesar. And he blackballed, that was it. Zoe didn't want anything more to do with this. He promised us we would never work in the Midwest. You know, Joe, it seems like yesterday. And again, nobody wanted to hear what we had to say. They wanted to hear Top 40. So yes, we had to make the decision. Do we sell out and play Top 40 and become maybe the biggest club act in the Midwest? But how far will that go, you know? Or do we roll the dice and go somewhere where they get this and maybe take it even further? We decided on the latter. We threw all our stuff in U-Haul trailers and drove across the country to Los Angeles because we had to be where the record companies were. There was nothing really going on in Chicago. There were some studios there that were making records, but it was more, you know, local stuff. You know, WLS played it. Groups like the New Colony Six, the Ides of March, which finally became a national act.
Buckinghams?
The Buckinghams, you know, but we wanted to go for the throat. If we're going to be ourselves, if we're going to really commit to this, let's go somewhere where we have a shot at becoming a national act at exposure. So it's either New York or LA. LA makes the most sense because that's where all the studios are, and that's where the rock and roll records are being made.
Is this when GUERCIO came in?
Well, yeah. Part of the reason for choosing LA is that Jim GUERCIO, who had also been a DePaul alumnus, and hence Walt had become a friend through his association at DePaul. Jimmy GUERCIO was, while he was a student, while he was at DePaul, was an amazingly good bass player, and he became a regular session guy at Chess Records, which was probably one of the bigger studios in Chicago. Walt called GUERCIO and said, hey Matt, we got a group here that I think you might want to hear. We're doing some stuff that nobody else is doing, and I think you might be interested. He went, okay. So he and his manager flew to Chicago. GUERCIO shows up, and we start playing our original songs. And next thing you know, GUERCIO said, just keep doing what you're doing, and figure in about 6 months, coming to LA, and we'll see if we can get something going, you know, in the LA scene. So, you know, we finished out our club thing and basically put all our stuff in U-Haul trailers and drove to LA. GUERCIO had found a humble little
2-bedroom.
Yeah, a little house under the freeway in Hollywood, and it was a very bohemian neighborhood. There were a lot of musicians in the neighborhood. You know, you could always hear somebody jamming. Walt, Danny, and Peter were married. They lived in an apartment building around the corner. But Terry and Robert, myself and Lee, and then a couple roadies lived in this house. And my bedroom had been the dining room, and I had to take the living room drapes and put them over the arch between the living room and the dining room to have some privacy. And then I had to put a nail in the door jamb of the swinging kitchen door coming into the dining room so I'd have a little bit of privacy. Terry's bedroom was one end of the living room, and the wall he made was with custom amplifier cabinets, speaker cabinets, blue vinyl custom cabinets was the wall of his bedroom. There was no lights in the house, lamps in the house to speak of. It was all Christmas lights and aluminum foil. That was the lighting in the house. We had a dog a mascot named Bootsy, who was part collie and part something, and it was great. And we'd rehearse in the living room of that house.
You just said it was great.
It was great.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Great. I said great. It was great. It was fantastic. It was a musical community, 24/7. We were writing, playing, sitting with each other, creating ideas, parts of songs, lyrics. It was a symposium, a 24/7 musical experience.
You were oblivious then to the surroundings.
Pardon me?
You were oblivious to the surroundings. It was just the camaraderie and the music.
Oh yeah, but I think we were all single, 20 years old, a bunch of young single musicians with a common goal, and GUERCIO had created an opportunity to let this happen. I mean, rather than be annoyed that I slept in a dining room, it was on the contrary. It was amazing because if I got a song idea at 3 in the morning, Terry was right outside the curtain. Hey Terry, check this out, and vice versa. So I mean, we'd sleep when we wanted to. Other than sleeping and eating, we were just creating. The music was going on. The neighbors called the cops more times than I can remember, for disturbing the peace. In the course of this creation, this process, we got invited to be an opening act at the Whiskey A Go-Go. Albert King was scheduled to appear at the Whiskey, and they were looking for somebody to open for him. And GUERCIO's management called the Whiskey, said, "Hey, look, we got this group that's fresh out of Chicago. They're doing some groundbreaking, totally amazing things. They got a horn section, big sound, and they work cheap. They're kids." And Elmer at the Whiskey said, "Okay, yeah, we'll give them a shot." So we set up, and we sound checked and all that stuff, and we played the show, and people were going nuts. People were going nuts. Well, we got invited back, and we got invited back again, and we became the house band at the Whiskey because we sold the joint out. We were up in the dressing room. The Whiskey A Go-Go was also a club in LA where if you were a big act performing in Los Angeles at the Forum or Stadium or wherever, if you had a night off, you'd go to the Whiskey to see, hey, what's going on in town? To hear what the latest. And everybody would be in there one time or another. The Stones, the Who, you name it. They'd come in, just check out the local town. Well, we were in the dressing room waiting to come back on stage for the next set. As we turned to leave, there's a guy standing in the doorway, and it's Jimi Hendrix. And he looked at us, and he said, "Shit." He said, "You guys have a horn section that sounds like one set of lungs and a guitar player that's better than me. You want to go on the road?" Yeah. So we became Hendrix's opening act. That was exposure that you couldn't buy. That was, a national tour of stadium, of arenas, an arena tour. But the Whiskey, you'd meet everybody there. Keith Moon got it. Keith Moon loved the band, and he was dying to work together, to do a joint tour with the Who. But, Daltrey and Townsend never quite bought it. But anyway, now that we're in LA, we're able to do our shit, and we're rehearsing this stuff around the clock in the house. We moved to LA in June of '68, and in the course of our run at the Whiskey, GUERCIO also used that platform to bring record companies in. Wining and Dining, all the labels. All of them. Columbia, Capitol, RCA, Reprise, everybody. And bidding wars began, you know, as they heard us and realized, man, these guys are special. They're unique. GUERCIO kept pumping them up, and yeah, you know, the bidding started. And GUERCIO just sat back and let the price do this. Finally, Columbia came up with a huge deal. Clive Davis, he got it. He saw what we had. And we signed a contract with CBS, with Columbia. 6 months later, we were in New York, Studio A, making Chicago Transit Authority on 8 tracks. It was amazing. Freddie Cotero was the engineer, and boy, he was an artist with the razor blade, because that's how you made edits. Yeah. It wasn't digital, you know, it was all by hand. It was all analog, all organic. And Simon and Garfunkel were making their record at the same time. It was, might have been the big one with
Bridge Over Troubled Water?
Yeah, yeah.
That was 69.
Yeah, it was January of '69, and Roy Halley was their producer. Yeah, Mrs. Robinson and all that, and they had just hit the big wave, and this was like, you know, touted as going to be this album, and Paul Simon was the nicest guy in the world. But Artie he wanted nothing to do with us. And they were the big shots, so they got the prime time. They recorded from noon until midnight. They had the sweet spot, the 12 hours. Mm-hmm. And our studio time went from midnight to, actually, they went from noon until about 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night. And then when they left, and we came in around 10, 11 at night, and we recorded till 5 in the morning. We had the graveyard shift. We had to record overnight because that's the only availability in the studio. So we were scared shitless. We realized at one point, here we are standing in this studio. I mean, Frank Sinatra is recorded here. I mean, everybody's recorded. This is the shit. And you're standing in front of this mic, and you're realizing this is going on tape forever. I hope I don't make a mistake. And does anybody really know what time it is the first track we tried. And it was live in the studio because there was only 8 tracks. So the rhythm section was all in the studio, and they had the horn section in an ISO booth. We weren't going to tape. We were in the ISO booth just so the rhythm section could monitor us as they're playing the track to get the horn kicks and the stuff, so it wouldn't sound like it was not done together. You know, I remember using the toilet in the bathroom in the hallway with a newspaper and a mic with reverb for a snare kick, for a whack snare, because we couldn't get enough room or enough power out of a snare drum, out of the kit in the drum cage. So we tried everything and wound up running a mic cable to the bathroom that was tile with a newspaper, and got this huge snare.
A rolled up newspaper.
A rolled up newspaper, yeah. Things like that you had to do because you didn't have all the bells and whistles that we have now. And then for introduction, I believe for questions 67 and 68, we tracked in the church. They had a big cathedral where they did all the orchestral dates. And they did the Stravinsky recordings there. with the Philharmonic, and we tracked in that church, the cathedral, with the high ceiling. Oh, the sound. And that's where you get that big room sound with those tracks on the Chicago Transit Authority. Those two tracks in particular. And we finished the album. Finally, we had no idea if it was, we didn't know if it was any good. It was just, okay, this is us. This is where we're at. This is us. Take it or leave it. GUERCIO obviously heard something, because, as the sessions progressed, his enthusiasm grew. And then Roy Halley heard us in rehearsal. He was, at the time, we'd come in earlier and we'd rehearse in Studio E, which was downstairs. It's a smaller room, where we'd get the tracks ready, and then when we were ready for the real thing, we'd go upstairs to A. And Roy Halley popped his head in Studio E and heard us and just, what's this? That was kind of what everybody's reaction was. What's this? What is this? Also, when we were at the Whiskey, a lot of people don't know this story either. It's very relevant too. We were in the Whiskey. Al Cooper, at the time, the Blues Project. Al would come out and he'd camp at Chateau Marmont and just kind of glean what was going on to see if there's anything he could pick from the tree for his own use. And he used to come to the Whiskey a lot. Well, we were there and he heard us. And we became friends because he had to meet us after he heard us. And he just, what is this? What do you get? I'm a new person. This is, and patted us on the back. I love what you're doing. He got it. He's a total musician, and he was also a staff producer in New York, which was a real handy thing because he went back to New York and took a break from the Blues Project, handpicked first call session guys in Manhattan, and literally assembled Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Having his contract, his producer contract with the label, he took this assembled band with charts to boot. Okay, you guys, we're gonna make a band. Let's call it Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I don't know how they came up with a name, but apparently he assembled these amazing players, told them that we have to, let's create some, okay, I heard this band, I don't know if he taped us, but I heard this group at the Whiskey in LA, and they're doing this and this. Let's see if we can do something like that, it's gonna be a while before they get on a label. They're still bidding, we can get in the studio this week. Let's put some charts. So Fred Lipsius or Dick Halligan, probably two of the guys involved, they created these charts.
Lou Soloff.
Lou Soloff, rest in peace, I think. Amazing players. They went in the studio and Al made that record. I mean, lickety split. And Columbia released it, Child is Father Than Man. They beat us to the punch on record. GUERCIO had to make a deal with CLIVE. CLIVE said, okay, we're having a little trouble with Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I'll give Chicago CTA, a double disc if you produce Blood, Sweat, and Tears' next album. So GUERCIO agreed. We got our double album, which was essential because the length of the cuts mandated 2 discs. I mean, they weren't 3-minute singles. They were 6-7 minute cuts.
Right.
So we needed 2 discs to embody the full spectrum of this music. GUERCIO produced Spinning Wheel, that record. And that
was a great album. It made me so very happy.
You know what? GUERCIO made it a great album. GUERCIO had amazing years. And
David, too. I mean, too. He was a great singer.
Well, yeah. Yeah, but just speaking of GUERCIO, he was a pioneer. I mean, he could take 8 tracks and make it sound huge. He had a huge sound, great drum sound, great bass sound, and the horn sound. I mean, we'd double or triple track and then combine tracks. We'd stack until we got this wall of horns, and I was able to play pedals on the bottom. I mean, fat stuff. But GUERCIO's production of Spinning Wheel was a real good tutelage, a real good tutorial, I should say, for his learning how to maximize brass on a small scale, make them huge. And so he used that experience of Blood, Sweat, and Tears on how to master the art of making a 3-piece horn section or 4-piece section sound big. And so it was a multiple purpose, that record. Anyway, he gave him that record. He gave Clive that album for Blood, Sweat, and it was a 1-record deal. He wasn't planning on doing. He wasn't contracted to do any more Blood, Sweat, and Tears. But he returned the favor. Okay, my responsibility has been met. Now I can concentrate on Chicago. And the Chicago Transit Authority released double disc. When we went into the studio to do Chicago, the second album, Chicago Transit Authority was still in the top of the Hot 100. A year later, it had not gone anywhere. It was still the top 40. I mean, it was on the charts like 3 years. It just didn't go away. And it was word of mouth because we wouldn't get on radio. We released Question 67, 68, I'm a Man, and Beginnings as singles. Radio wouldn't touch it because they didn't understand it. What's this? I mean, does anybody really know what time it is? It was underground. Robert and I, between us, wrote a dozen of the hits, and then Peter came along and filled in the blanks in the 80s with Inspiration and Hard to Say I'm Sorry with David Foster, another key player in the resurgence of the band, right when we needed it. All the Drake stations, which were the top stations in the country, LS, OR in New York, KHJ in LA, if you didn't get on their playlist, you weren't going to get a hit, okay? So all the Drake stations, we were the kiss of death. Nobody wanted to touch us because they didn't understand. Chicago comes out. I'm in the car on my way home. Album's been out for a month, maybe less, a couple of weeks. Unbeknownst to me, to any of the band members, I believe, the ballet, which is a multi-movement piece that I wrote, takes up almost the whole second side of the record. We didn't know about what edits were. Apparently, Columbia, Freddie Cotero went into the studio and edited Make Me Smile and Color My World out of the ballet. And I'm in my car on my way home, I'm down on Santa Monica Boulevard, and I hear, and this is Don Steele on KHJ, man. It's like the big station, Ladies and gentlemen, here we go with a new song from a new group or a new artist called Chicago that is destined for #1. Make me smile, baby. Bum, 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 bum. And I'm going, holy shit, that's us. We're on KHJ. And I'm looking around going, hey, we're on the radio. You know, people who look at me like I'm crazy. You know, hey, this guy's an nut kid. And that's when I realized we're gonna make it.